Hey everyone, just letting you know this is not the full episode. This is a shortened version that's a bit more focused. The full version has nearly 40 extra minutes of content talking about the problem of other minds, perceptualism and inferentialism, and more on the privacy of experience. So be on the lookout for that on Walden Pod, available on iTunes, Spotify, and patreon.com/WaldenPod. Sorry to the patrons of Counter-Apologetics, but soon I will be down to only one podcast. One is more than enough. There will also still be the YouTube channel and the Substack. Alright, I hope you enjoy the show today. Welcome everyone, I'm your host, Emerson Green. I think that I'm a conscious being. I'm a subject of experience. If you were to squeeze my hand or stick a knife in it, it would feel like something for me when you did that. By contrast, if you stick a knife in the dirt beneath your feet, it's not like anything for the ground to have a knife stuck in it. Something I've noticed about my mind, I'm in a better position to know what's going on within my point of view than anybody else. I have privileged access. Pain, for example, is a mental event, and the subject is in a better place to know about that mental event than anybody else. They know about it with greater certainty than anybody else. As Colin McGinn put it, if consciousness is a stream, it is an invisible stream. Of course, I'm not just a mind. I'm also a physical body, which is closely conjoined with my mind. I'm an embodied conscious person. Thanks to the physical world, other minds, such as yourself, can have a pretty good idea of what's going on in my mind. Sometimes other people notice, attend to, physical indicators of my feelings and experiences before I attend to my feelings and experiences themselves, meaning they know what I'm feeling even before I'm fully aware that I'm having those feelings. Even so, they have to work from indicators of my feelings, not the feelings themselves. Certain physical behavior is reliably correlated with certain experiences, so this is actually pretty easy for an attentive observer. Now, even just in setting up what we're going to be talking about, I've already said a couple things that might bother physicalists, the philosophers who think consciousness is nothing over and above the physical material of the brain. But there are many strains of physicalism, and some of the stranger forms would disagree with the less contentious things I said, like that I have privileged access to my own mind, that I'm in a better place to know about my experiences than anyone else. Qualitative or phenomenal properties are typically understood as private, meaning they are not publicly observable like ordinary physical properties. Some physicalists think phenomenal consciousness is an illusion, and privacy is one of those illusory aspects of the mind that they think we should reject. For example, in Qualia, Daniel Dennett identifies privacy as one of the attributes of this illusory phenomenal consciousness. Today we won't be focusing on the negative case against privacy, but rather on building a positive case for it. So I won't be examining in detail the negative arguments against privacy, privileged access, invisibility, etc., at least not today. Illusionists and other privacy skeptics have rejected this aspect of the mind, so in defending privacy, I'm arguing against illusionism. The fact that something about consciousness is private is not a philosopher's fiction or some technical bit of jargon that doesn't have any relevance outside philosophy of mind. Privacy creeps into other areas of philosophy, as well as science, medicine, and ordinary life. And that's mainly what the last section is about. Even if you think eliminating privacy is a live option, it's not an option to remove it with surgical precision, avoiding any further repercussions. So I'm going to provide a few lengthy passages from philosophers who have all different kinds of views on privacy just to ensure that everyone is on the same page. And if you listened to my epistemology series from a while back, you'll know that I think understanding a word is not usually a matter of knowing a definition. I think definitions are overrated and unnecessary in understanding a concept. It's better to give examples if you want someone to understand a term. Giving a definition is usually not the shortest pathway there. So I'm relying on these lengthy passages so you can see how the concept is used and how it fits into the broader conceptual web. So here's qualia quietist Pete Mandic setting up a view that he does not agree with. Quote, "One of the central ideas that behaviorists rebel against an idea with close associations with Descartes and his dualism, is the idea of the privacy of the mental. The idea of privacy is that you can only have knowledge of your own mind. You can make an educated guess about other minds, but you can only know, or only know with certainty, your own mind. From a Cartesian point of view, sensations are known only privately. Others can observe your behaviors, but only you can experience your sensations. From the point of view of someone on the outside, your sensations might be very different or altogether missing. So I would disagree with that bit about knowledge. I don't think privacy implies that you can only have knowledge of your own mind. If it did, that would almost be a sufficient argument against privacy. If you could not know that other minds exist, if you accept the privacy thesis, that would be a sufficient reason to reject privacy. So you can know about other minds, but the point about certainty is a fairly common one. If anything is certain, the existence of my own mind is certain. Not so with other minds. I can easily doubt the existence of other minds, since there's some kind of epistemic asymmetry between the mental states of others and my own mental states, a fact that is best explained by privacy. So Hede-Hasselmerk explains further, quote, "To say that one's conscious states are private does not mean that nobody else can know anything about them. It rather means that nobody else can know about them in the same direct way. That is, my own conscious states appear directly to me, whereas the conscious states of other people we infer or perceive indirectly through their behavior, verbal reports, facial expressions, and so on. Because of this direct access, many philosophers also hold that our own consciousness can be known with absolute certainty. Descartes famously claimed that we have indubitable knowledge of our own consciousness, and thereby our own existence. Cogito ergo sum." End quote. So in crudely plain language, I cannot look at your experiences, not in the way that I can observe your body language, the contortions of your face, and even your neurological events. I'm not sure why anyone would deny that, or claim to not understand what is meant by that. For many people, this is an unrevisable datum that simply needs to be accounted for. Because they're my experiences, I'm in a different position with respect to them than you are or ever could be. I can't pull out a qualia microscope and zoom into your brain tissue and eventually see your thoughts and feelings and experiences. I can observe electrochemical brain activity. In principle, I could observe neurons and even the atoms that compose them and all the physical goings-on in your brain. And with enough progress in neuroscience, I could work out, in a sort of inferential way, what you're feeling. But this hypothetical futuristic technology will never put me in the same direct, immediate relation to your first-person experiences that you stand in. I like how Richard Swinburne put it, quote, "Whatever ways others have of finding out whether I am seeing the tree outside my window, or have a thought that today is Thursday, or am intending to shut the door, I could also use. Like others, I could study my behavior by watching a film of it, or inspect my brain via some instrument. But I have an additional way of finding out whether I am seeing the tree or having the thought that today is Thursday or am intending to shut the door, by actually having the experience of seeing the tree or having the thought or intention. And no one else could have that way of knowing about these events. A mental event would not be my mental event unless I could become aware of it by experiencing it. Someone else can have a pain of the same intensity and duration at the same time I do, but there would be two different pains, her pain and my pain. By contrast, what makes it the case that inanimate objects as well as humans and higher animals have physical events is that they are public events. What makes an event a physical event is that it is an event to which no one substance can have privileged access by experiencing it. Any physical event is necessarily equally accessible to any human with the right training. It is for this reason that all the events which happen in the inanimate world, and also all the events in our bodies, are physical events. A brain event, a certain neuron firing at a certain time, is a physical event. Although it may cause someone to have a sensation, the brain event is not itself an event to which anyone has the unique access of the kind that they have to their sensations. So, summing up the epistemic asymmetry argument, I submit that it is easier to doubt the consciousness of others than it is to doubt the existence of my own consciousness. Radical stuff, I know. Further, a subject is rational in holding that the existence of their mind is more secure than the existence of other minds, because the subject has an additional source of justification for belief in the existence of their own mind. Whatever I have to support the existence of other minds, I also have for my mind, since I can observe all my physical behavior, for example in a mirror or on a screen or with some scientific instrument. But it appears that I have something else to justify the belief in my mind that I do not have to justify my belief in other minds. So I think there's an epistemic asymmetry between one's own mind and the minds of others. That's how we get a problem of other minds to begin with. Here, it's not necessary to take a hard position on what that something else is exactly, just that A, it provides a source of justification for the belief in my own mind, a source of justification that I lack when it comes to the minds of others, and B, that it's private. So why believe that the extra source of justification is private rather than publicly accessible? Because if it were not private, then you could cite it to support your belief in the minds of others. But this is precisely what we've denied by accepting the asymmetry. You have an additional source of justification for the belief in the existence of your own mind that you do not have for the belief in the existence of other minds. Where could that additional justification come from other than private consciousness? Because if it weren't private, then you would also have it for others, not just yourself, and you'd be kicked back to the position of epistemic symmetry. So this is why there's a conflict between epistemic asymmetry and the rejection of mental privacy. In his contribution to Illusionism as a Theory of Consciousness, edited by Keith Frankish, George Ray made the following comment, quote, "I seriously find it pretty much as difficult to doubt the consciousness of other people and many higher animals as I do my own." So I found that pretty striking since it's contrary to my views and probably most people's views. No one feels compelled to write, "Yeah, I find it much easier to doubt the existence of my dog's mind than my own mind." That's all I wanted to say. It's just too obvious to be worth writing for its own sake. Apparently, Ray feels differently. To him, they are equally difficult to doubt. So is this just an abnormal psychological fact about one person? Maybe, but I find it more likely that anyone who says this is in the grips of a theory that leads them to say it. For me, it's easier to doubt the minds of animals than it is to doubt my own consciousness. I think that's probably true for most people, but I don't intend that in a merely descriptive sense. There's an implicit evaluation here. You are rational in the ordering of skepticism. You are justified in accepting an asymmetry between your mind and other minds. So imagine an asymmetry in a totally different case. Imagine someone was very skeptical about the existence of guitars, but Cartesianly certain about the existence of ukuleles. That was just an odd psychological fact about this person. You would think they were being irrational. Or imagine someone who's not roughly equally confident about the existence of their right hand and their left hand. They're very, very certain, extremely confident about the existence of their right hand. But their left hand? I mean, be serious. Very doubtful. We would think that person was being irrational. If they endorsed right hand, left hand asymmetry, we would try to point it out to them that they were being unreasonable, that they have roughly equal justification for belief in their right hand and their left hand. And if they're rational, they should think, "Oh man, you're right. Why do I think that? What an odd psychological fact about me." So how does that compare to the case of your mind versus other minds? Do you think it's irrational to endorse the asymmetry? Because when I turn my attention to the evidence, to the reasons I have to believe in your mind, they're really good. I have great reason to think that other minds exist. But then I think about my own mind, and it seems as though I have something else to support my own mind. I don't think I'm being irrational when I endorse the asymmetry between my mind and other minds. The level of justification is not the same. Something that leads me to think that is that all the evidence that I have for your mind, I can also have for my mind. I could observe all my behavior in a mirror or on a screen. I could observe my brain activity with scientific instruments. Everything that I have for you, I can also have for me. So far, we'd be on equal footing. But then there's something else that I seem to have for me that I just don't have for you. It's the exact opposite of the right-hand, left-hand case, where it seems like the evidence I have for my left hand is exactly the same as the evidence I have for my right hand. And I think to myself, well, hang on, it must be private then, whatever that something else is that I have for me that I don't have for you. Because if it weren't private, I could have it for you. I could appeal to it to support the existence of your mind, not just my own. So at this point, I'm thinking, why would I endorse the anti-privacy view? Wouldn't that lead me to George Ray's position? When I draw my attention to the evidence, wouldn't that lead me to thinking, oh, I actually have equal reason for believing in other minds and my own mind? Roughly equal. Just like I have roughly equal justification for believing in my right hand and my left hand. The privacy anti-realist is committed to symmetry, so the belief in one's own mind would be on equal footing as the belief in other minds. On the other hand, if there is private consciousness, then it's clear how I could have something justifying the existence of my own mind that I wouldn't have to justify the existence of other minds. So if we're going to embrace the asymmetry, as I think we should, then we need something that's not publicly available. Fortunately, there's this thing called qualia, or phenomenal consciousness, that is typically taken to be private, to which the subject has privileged access. It would perfectly explain the epistemic asymmetry. So lucky us, privacy can neatly explain the asymmetry. It can explain why it seems we are rationally justified in taking the existence of our own minds to be more certain than the existence of other minds. The anti-privacy view, however, is not amenable to the asymmetry. If there is no private aspect to consciousness, then it seems as though my mind and other minds should be on equal footing. But I would submit that is not the case, so the anti-privacy view must be wrong. So I'll return to George Ray's comment in his contribution to Illusionism as a Theory of Consciousness, edited by Keith Frankish. Quote, I seriously find it pretty much as difficult to doubt the consciousness of other people as I do my own. I mean, that is where this leads, and for me, that's just too high of a cost. I cannot say that my honest judgment of the evidence is that I have equal justification for belief in my mind and the minds of others. I have a high degree of justification for belief in both, but they are not on equal footing. So this is a major reason why I think there's a private aspect to consciousness. So I'm going to go through a few more lines of evidence, a little more rapid fire. I think privacy is the best explanation of a number of facts about our minds, not just the fact that I have a greater degree of justification for the belief in my own mind than I have for the belief in the minds of other humans and higher animals. So here are a few of them. First, widespread disagreement on where consciousness exists in nature. Is it like something to be a worm, or a honeybee, a starfish? Well, it's not like we can just go check. Even informed scientists and philosophers have different views about consciousness across the biological world. We can't just go out and empirically observe whether a starfish is conscious. They may or may not be. No one really knows. Widespread disagreement on animal consciousness is best explained by the privacy of subjective experience. Next, the possibility of panpsychism. Some philosophers and scientists have argued that physical matter and consciousness are two sides of the same coin. They think experience is an intrinsic part of physical matter, regardless of what kind of larger system that matter constitutes. So panpsychists believe that you're only made of one substance, but that your physical body has an interiority to it. You're subjectively mental from inside and physical from the outside. Panpsychists draw no arbitrary line in the natural world where this interior-exterior nature of substance is cut off. You yourself are made of protons, neutrons, electrons, and consciousness. It's all the same physical material everywhere. The fact that this may be true and that the debate can't be settled by appeal to public observation is best explained by the fact that consciousness is private. Really, this is just an extension of the previous point about the consciousness of lower animals. You just keep going down. So my main argument throughout this episode has been about justification, but we could also switch gears to conceivability and reframe those two previous points. It's conceivable that consciousness doesn't exist in certain physical structures to which we typically attribute consciousness, and it's conceivable that consciousness does exist in physical structures to which we do not ordinarily attribute consciousness. So it's conceivable, which, to remind you, doesn't just mean possible to imagine, but rather means conceptually possible or can't be ruled out just through reasoning about the concepts involved. So it's conceivable that 85% of dogs are conscious and 15% are not. There's nothing incoherent about that state of affairs. Alternatively, it's possible that starfish are conscious, or coral reefs, physical structures that we don't ordinarily think of as being subjectively mental from the inside. So we could make one argument about the conceivability of consciousness in surprising places, and another about consciousness conceivably not existing in physical structures that we typically attribute consciousness to. Next, consider past surgical practices. So here's a somewhat disturbing fact about newborns. This is from Jonathan Birch. Quote, "In the 1980s, it was still apparently common to perform surgery on newborn babies without anesthetic on both sides of the Atlantic. This led to appalling cases and to public outcry and to campaigns to change clinical practice. People don't need convincing anymore that we should take newborn human babies seriously as sentience candidates, but the tale is a useful cautionary tale because it shows you how deep that overconfidence can run and how problematic it can be. It just underlines this point that overconfidence about sentience is everywhere and is dangerous." In Birch's book, The Edge of Sentience, he continually warns us about that kind of overconfidence about sentience. I think it would be difficult to explain how the hell this overconfidence got a foothold to begin with without privacy. Why were doctors so confident that they weren't doing any serious harm by performing surgery on newborns without anesthetic? Couldn't they see that they were doing harm? Well, apparently not. Although they were never in the dark about the physical responses of the newborns. And I think the privacy skeptic might say, well, the advocates also had nothing to go off of but the physical responses of the newborns. And they were so confident that they were in pain because they were crying and for whatever other reasons you think other people have minds. And that's true, but to repeat my point, without privacy, how did this overconfidence get a foothold to begin with? Why did they not only believe, but were confident that they weren't doing any serious harm by performing surgery on newborns in the way that they were? Without privacy, how is it even possible that anyone ever thought that they weren't doing any harm? Privacy is obviously the best explanation there. The same goes for coma patients. Birch notes multiple cases of patients who were unresponsive after a brain injury, and doctors were confident that they couldn't hear anything or feel anything. That is, until the patients woke up and accurately reported what they'd been hearing. The reality of mental privacy, once again, is the best explanation of how anyone ever ended up in a nightmarish situation like that. And because of cases like these, it's far more common to talk to coma patients, to explain what's happening to these unresponsive patients, so there's less of a risk of worsening their experience by shuttling them from surgery to surgery without them having any clue what's happening to them. So that brings me to the next point. Self-report in neuroscience. Self-report has played a crucial role in the science of understanding what's going on in the mind. Privacy easily explains why that is. If we want to get a foothold in understanding the neural correlates of consciousness, we of course have to ask subjects what they're feeling and experiencing, at least initially. We can make enough progress that this becomes less and less necessary, but they're always the final authority. If the neuroscientist says they're seeing a green frog, but the subject denies any such appearance, then all else equal we would side with the subject, not the neuroscientist. Why else would that be, other than the fact that the subject stands in a privileged relation to their own experiences? And if that's not the case, why would we need their verification or confirmation at any point? If their conscious experiences were as publicly observable as their neurological events, they could have remained in perpetual silence as neuroscientists carried on their work on the neural correlates of conscious experience. And in ordinary life, too, we don't often know what others are thinking and feeling, and vice versa. I've noticed a lot of illusionists, actually I think almost every single one I know, has really loved making a point about how sometimes others can tell what you're feeling before you attend to your own feelings, which is true. Once I remember at work being told to take a walk since I was obviously about to lose my temper. I thought I was fine, so I said no, but about a minute later I realized that my coworker was right and that I should take a lap. She knew before I did that I was too angry and needed to walk away for a second. Okay, that's interesting. But I think I'm not just a mind, I'm also a physical body, which is closely conjoined with my mind. There are different ideas about how that works exactly, but I'm an embodied conscious person. And thanks to the physical world, other minds, such as yourself, can have a pretty good idea of what's going on in my mind. It's true that other people occasionally attend to physical indicators of my feelings and experiences before I attend to my feelings and experiences themselves, meaning they know what I'm feeling, even before I'm fully aware that I'm having those feelings. Even so, they have to work from indicators of my feelings, not the feelings themselves. Certain physical behavior is reliably correlated with certain experiences, so this can be easy for an attentive observer. It's because of the intricate correlation between the mind and the body that this is possible. So that's how I would explain it. No one denies that there is an intimate correlation between the mind and the body. So how is this a problem for my view? It's not difficult for the non-illusionist to account for at all, so I don't know why this is brought up so frequently and with such enthusiasm. And I find this is generally the case when illusionists or privacy skeptics try to make arguments against privacy. It's just usually not that hard to account for what they're talking about, so I don't know why they bring it up. So as for those bullet points, some of those examples I just ran through are very similar, obviously. They're all variations on a theme, let's say. I am not trying to double count the evidence. I'm giving different examples because different examples will land with different people. Maybe they have a hang-up for one of them, but it doesn't apply to the other. So there's a lot of overlap, but these are the kind of phenomena that make me a lot more confident that privacy is real. It's the best explanation of a number of facts about our world. It's not like it all comes down to the conceivability of zombies or something. There have been numerous historical and contemporary examples of overconfidence about where sentience supposedly doesn't exist. And as Jonathan Birch rightly points out, this overconfidence about sentience can be extremely dangerous, as in the case of coma patients, newborns, and animals. Privacy is the best explanation of how anyone ended up in those situations in the first place. How would you explain it otherwise?